How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. This is a show about wrestling. And this week, we will be continuing our Royal Rumble series of shows. As that is getting closer, it's probably this weekend by the time you're seeing this episode, as it's on Sunday the 29th. And it should be an interesting event. I always look forward to it, despite how many times in the past decade it's disappointed. We'll get to some of those disappointments as we move along here. Last week, we did a rebook of the 1995 Royal Rumble, so please go check that out. And this week, we are going to be covering our favorite and least favorite non-Rumble Royal Rumble matches. Did I explain that accurately, Leonard?
Yes, I believe so. And I always like to put a disclaimer on something like this, that this is our opinion. It's not a definitive fact that these are the best or these are the worst. And I'm sure there are others out there that we're not talking about that maybe we didn't think of or that we just didn't take a look at or wanted to talk about that are out there. So certainly recommend those in the comments. But these are 3 on my end and 3 on Chad's end, best and worst of kind of what we came across. I looked at some lists online. I looked at some cards, kind of jogged my memory a little bit, and then I reviewed all the matches that we're talking about. I watched fresh this week. So.
Right. And I will say, before I elaborate there, we have to notice Leonard's shirt, which is Roddy Piper related. So we have to appreciate the They Live.
Yes, the They Live shirt. This was a Christmas present from the wife.
Nice.
She doesn't always know what she's getting me, but she knows I will like it.
There you go. And I will say that when it comes to the worst lists, or rather our least favorites, I definitely used a different criteria than did Leonard. At least that's my guess.
Yes.
I've seen. And, so I will say, first off, that the ones that I've selected, you will notice, are not necessarily the worst technical matches. There are some really bad technical matches, and I'm sure Leonard has some of those on there. The ones that I selected specifically are ones that made me angry, or ones that annoyed me in some way, or just flat out, I just wasn't into it. So we'll get more into that. I just wanted to put that disclaimer on my list specifically.
Yes. So my list is more just, I took that literally. I just went looking for the worst matches that I could find. The 3 that I have are all like extremely short. Like I think they're all under 5 minutes. I think the longest is like 3.5 minutes long.
Right.
But we don't have them in any order, we should say. I think we're going to talk about them in chronological order just because. But my first match to talk about is Chyna versus Ivory for the WWF Women's title from 2001. And I got into this match from another one that we'll talk about later. But that match, I watched that match. This one came on. I kept watching it and went, oh, yeah, I didn't. Because I think everyone talks about the victory that Chyna got over Ivory at WrestleMania and not so much this match here. So the storyline is that Chyna is returning from a serious neck injury from a spike pile driver by right to censor. And the match structure is terrible just to start with. You have Stevie Richards interfering with no DQ being called. You have the ladies going into the crowd with no count out being made. And it's a regular rules match. And this all happens before the appearance of Chyna re-injuring herself doing the handspring back elbow, which shouldn't necessarily hurt her neck. And Jim Ross is covering on commentary that, it was that final rotation. There was a whiplash movement. That's what got her. He's really trying to cover this here. And what not only is this a technically bad match, but it also leaves a very sour taste in my mouth because they treat it like a shoot. They treat it like Chyna's legitimately injured. You've got JR doing the serious voice. You've got Jerry Lawler going into the ring to check on her. You've got the paramedics coming out. And keep in mind, this isn't too long after Owen Hart's death in the ring. So I don't think that's a good look to do for this match. I think you could have done something to say that she re-injured the neck and presented it in a different way. But didn't like the angle, didn't like the match.
Yes, I've seen this match, and I also didn't like it. And I feel like Jim Ross has elaborated on this. I think they did a whole Chyna episode on Grill and JR. And basically, Chyna didn't want to work with women. More on that later. But Chyna didn't want to work with women. And, like, I agree with the sour taste because it's like, well, this is the only way Chyna would lose the title is if, like, there's some pre-existing injury that then gets re-injured and and they went overboard. I agree with the Lawler going into the ring and all that kind of stuff. I didn't like it and not a fan, so I agree with you definitely that's a worthy contender. So again, going in chronological order, my first match is Ahmed Johnson versus Farook, January 19th, 1997 at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. Tagline here was "No more Mr. Nice Guy, Leonard." But Alice Cooper was not there.
Okay, and nor was Jake Roberts. I don't think, was he there? He might have been there. I'd have to look.
Jake Roberts might have been somewhere there.
Yeah, because he might have been there. I try to remember when he left again. Anyway.
So just a little bit of background on this era. So this was the event, the Rumble that had AAA involvement. So a lot of Lucha Libre people were there. You had Shawn Michaels taking on Sid. You had Austin winning the Rumble when he cheated to beat Brett. So I remember this because I remember wanting to really enjoy this feud. I for whatever reason, I thought that Ahmed Johnson was somebody at the time, and I think the company did as well, was somebody that could really be on the rise, that could really be a contender. And the problem was, like, I thought this feud had a lot of potential. And unfortunately, the matches were just terrible. They just weren't very good because, and I'm not going to pile on Farouk, Ron Simmons. Ahmed Johnson was just not very good in the ring, and I don't think he was very committed to what he was doing either. From what I understand, he was not very well liked for various reasons. I wasn't there. I don't know. But the finish, you have a DQ finish, and, which was basically like a fart in church. I just thought that the matches that these two guys had never really met or even halfway met expectations. And that was a big disappointment to me. Like, they would have run-ins in the Rumble, I think, later on that night. And it was just a bunch of BS is the best way I can put it. Like, the feud was there. It had a lot of potential and promise, but it just was never met. And I just remember hating that. So that's why I put that there.
Yeah, he wouldn't be a spotlight, but, we could probably spend an episode talking about Ahmed Johnson. It's really fascinating. This is a guy who came in out of nowhere with a rocket strap to his butt, had a great look, had raw charisma, but couldn't really work, couldn't really cut a promo. I thought this was an okay power match for the most part. My biggest problem, and this actually comes up a lot tonight, is the idea that you have a lot going on that would draw disqualification that doesn't.
Right.
There are belt shots by Ron Simmons. There's brawling on the outside that goes along with chair shots. And then it's not until everybody runs in that they finally go with the disqualification finish. So it's kind of inconsistent with what we're doing or not doing here. I did like the kidney work. They established that Ahmed Johnson had a kidney injury. Farouk goes after that with different kidney shots and power moves to the kidney. You don't see that. You don't see anybody working the kidney. So I actually kind of like that sequence. It's just under 9 minutes, but it feels like twice as long.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I agree.
Times of matches before, before watching them and looked up, okay, what am I getting into here? And I saw, it's just a little under 9 minutes. It felt like 20.
Yeah, and you mentioned working on the kidney because of Ahmed Johnson kidney injury. Ahmed Johnson had an everything injury. Like, he was very injury prone, and that was part of the issue. But we digress. Leonard, what's your next match?
Yes. So my next one, again, going chronologically, I have Dawn Marie versus Torrie Wilson from 2003. Billed as the first ever stepdaughter versus stepmother match, which is the only thing you need to know. We can move on. I don't have to say anything else to
That's
tell
true.
you how bad. So the whole storyline here is one of the worst ever. Dawn Marie starts banging Torrie Wilson's dad, played by her actual real dad, Al Wilson, which I think makes it even worse.
May he rest in peace.
Yes, he is passed now. But in the storyline, he and Dawn Marie get married, and he dies, and then Tori and Dawn fight at the funeral home. So very, it's a mixed bag of bad taste and stupidity here.
Very lowbrow.
And when it comes to the match itself, I mean, neither of these women are great wrestlers. I think they got better as they went, particularly Torrie Wilson. But they're not good workers. The match is short. I think it's like 3.5 minutes. That doesn't help. It's plain sloppy. It's poorly executed. And Tori does win, and they act like, oh, well, everything's great now. She won. Her father is dead. She wins a wrestling match, and it's fine.
Yeah, Torrie Wilson would really try hard throughout her career, but she just never had what it takes to actually be a good in-ring talent, because that's not what she was there for. She was there to be eye candy, and she and Dawn Marie are very attractive ladies, and that's what everybody was staring at. I mean, my gosh, the vignettes leading up to this had Dawn Marie in the shower and all that sort of nonsense.
Yeah, lingerie all the time, and Dawn Marie was a good valet. I like her
as a valet. Yes, absolutely. But yeah, this match and this feud were just terrible. There was a lot of bad feuds going on at this time. I also have a match from this particular event, so
yes,
we'll get into that. That's actually my last in chronological order. But yes, I agree with everything you said. It could very well be a contender for the worst. Mm-hmm. So my next match is Chris Jericho versus Chyna versus Hardcore Holly for the Intercontinental title, January 23rd, 2000 at Madison Square Garden. This era, you had Austin was out. He was injured at this time. Rock was taking the spotlight. You had a really superb card otherwise with Triple H and Cactus Jack, the Hardys and the Dudleys, Taz debuting against Kurt Angle. A lot was going on here. And you might think, well, these names, how is this the worst? Intergender matches just don't work for me very, very much. I think that WWE a few years ago did a mixed tag tournament that was like only on Facebook. And I thought that was actually kind of good because it was very tongue in cheek. There was a lot of comedy involved in it. So that necessarily didn't bother me. But intergender matches, I just never really cared for, especially the ones with Chyna. As we mentioned earlier, Chyna didn't want to work with ladies. She wanted to work with men. She thought, and JR has talked about this ad nauseum, how she thought she should be fighting for the title, the world heavyweight title. And, she's very muscular and intimidating, but it just didn't make any sense to me. I didn't, think it was really effective to put her in the ring with men. Not just for logic's sakes, but the matches to me were really awkward with her in them, because I think you could tell that the guys were not doing their 110% with her in the ring. That might be an arguable point. I just see awkwardness. So, Chris Jericho really did his best with her. I will say that. I just think that this is such a weird combination of people, Leonard. I know you're a Hardcore Holly fan. Well,
yes.
like this is such an odd combination of talent for the Intercontinental title. It just is.
I don't mind intergender matches. What I don't like, and this might surprise some people, is I don't like triple threat matches, because you usually wind up with two types of matches. Either one where it's very segmented, like person A works with person B, then they work with person C, then it's B and C, or one where the third person is just an oddball out and hardly does anything. And that's kind of the match we get here. I think if this had been Holly versus Jericho, this would have been fine. This would have been a good match. Their segments are fine. I like those segments. Chyna kind of gets sprinkled in here and there. And considering the storyline, Holly just feels like he's, odd. He sticks out like a sore thumb, considering the storyline going into this. I don't remember if you mentioned the idea was that Chris Jericho and Chyna were co-holders of the Intercontinental title at this time.
Yeah.
And this is going to be to clear it up. There was going to be one winner coming out of here. So I do think there's a few nice spots. There's a spot towards the end where Holly gets Chyna up and she takes a crossbody on high from Jericho. There's a superplex by Chyna on Holly that I thought looked okay. Honestly, I don't mind this. I don't hate it as much as you do, but as you said, there's more going on with your dislike of Chyna and her in men's matches, etc., that I don't have.
I just think that this is not a positive part of the Intercontinental title legacy. I think when you look back at some of the matches, like the classic matches that were had, with various legends, you look back at this and it just feels forced and somewhat awkward. But Leonard, what do you got for your last least favorite?
So last least favorite, again in chronological order, this is JBL versus the Boogeyman from 2006. I like both of these characters. They were purposely played to extremes and for laughs a lot of the time, but that doesn't lead to good matches. This one here is all about the shtick. It's only 2 minutes long, but it's probably 10 minutes altogether with all the pre-match and post-match theatrics. Even as a comedy match, this doesn't work. It doesn't come together. The feud here is bad. It involved the Boogeyman eating a fake growth off of Jillian Hall's face, who was working for JBL at the time. The pre-match involves the Boogeyman sexually assaulting Jillian Hall. He dry humps her on the mat and spits worms down her blouse, which is gross. It's not a good. I like the pump handle into a power slam finisher the Boogeyman does. That's about the only nice thing I can say about this. Is just a horrible match, horrible storyline, horrible feud.
Yeah. One thing I will disagree with you on is liking the Boogeyman character. I hated it. I thought it was stupid and very one note. Like, he eats worms. Wow, great.
Yes, he eats worms.
If this was 92 or 93 or 94, I think the Boogeyman would have fit right in with that horrible era of wrestling. But he's not that era. He's with JBL, who is a great, great character. And this match was not good. And I'll be honest, I had forgotten all that backstory that you just unloaded, which makes me dislike it more. So yeah, waste of both guys, in my opinion. My last match in order here is from 2003. January 19th, 2003, to be exact, at the Fleet Center in Boston, Massachusetts. So you had a lot going on in this era. Raw SmackDown brand split was going on. This was very much the Brock Lesnar phase, and he was being a qualifying match against the Big Show for the Rumble. We already mentioned the Tori and Dawn Marie feud, so we don't need to go into that. You had Angle and Benoit. So I remember being really excited for whatever reason about Scott Steiner joining WWE. Most of the WCW guys, including the NWO, had come over by this point, aside from Steiner and Goldberg, who was like a month or two away anyway. Steiner, but the problem was Steiner's in-ring work ended up being really, really bad because for whatever reason, he just didn't move around very well anymore. And he had zero chemistry with Triple H. And this was also during the era where was at his peak in terms of political manipulation backstage. And you would have the feud start here, but it would end at No Way Out the following month, which was another bad match. And then Steiner would, fart around for a little bit and he'd be gone shortly after this whole debacle. It just wasn't good. And it was just a real huge disappointment to me. Like I said, these matches that I put on my list, technically, they're not anywhere near the worst. To me, they were just really huge disappointments. And a lot of times when we were right back for 411, Leonard, that's what I would do with my worst movies list. Granted, a lot of them were just genuinely bad, but I would try, if there is one movie that really disappointed me, it would might end up on there. And that's the way it was with this. I think that it would have been great to see an actual feud here, but Triple H was never going to lose the title at this time. Like, he was keeping it off of everybody. So, and just the matches were just not good. So I don't know. Do you remember this one?
Yeah, I do from this one almost made my list. Um, and I'm going to contrast it with a match I'm going to talk about later on one of my favorites list, because as you mentioned, this was definitely what they called the Reign of Terror era for Triple H, where he was burying everybody.
Right.
And to watch it, you go, well, that's not bad. It's sloppy. It's boring. When you listen to someone like, say, Bruce Pritchard talk about the behind the scenes and how struck he was and this man was by it, and that they got sold a bill of goods with Scott Steiner.
Right.
Steiner's back was worse than he made it out to be. He had
I
the
remember
drop
all that.
foot, which was worse than he made it out to be. He botches a lot here. He's the baby face. He's getting booed by the end of it because of just how sloppy he is, how bad he is. It's all the wonkiness towards the end brings it down. Triple H tries to get counted out, but Hebner won't do it. He tries to get disqualified, and Hebner won't do it. But then he eventually just disqualifies him once he, after he said he wouldn't. And at the start of the match, he said that he wouldn't take any crap. At the start, he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to take any of that from you guys," and he does for the entire match until Triple H finally pulls out the sledgehammer.
Right.
Which is definitely a crutch for him. So it's a lame finish. It's a bad match. And I think everything that floats around it and behind the scenes is really what drags it down when you consider all that.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. So now we're going to move on to our favorites list. Mm-hmm. And again, we are going in chronological order. And Leonard, why don't you start us off?
I had to go super old school at some point. So I have the Rockers versus the Orient Express from 1991. This was long considered one of the best Rumble matches and best opening pay-per-view matches the WWF ever did. It's about 20 minutes. The pace is blistering. The double team moves used were very innovative for the time. You could transplant this match to today on a program and it would play fine. It wouldn't feel dated. This is the second version of the Orient Express. We talked about in our video about teams with Express in the name. So this is Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka. It's Bad Company from the AWA. And the Rockers and the Bad Company work together in the AWA. So they know each other very well. There's a familiarity. There's a chemistry, which leads to both teams just letting it go and really going for it here. It's a nice long match, but it doesn't feel long. Solid chain wrestling, good sequences from tag to tag with different guys working together, spots building each other. You have the Express running into each other early on, and then later they pull up and avoid it. But Michaels gets a double knocker on them anyway. So just the way that spot built. Michael does a moonsault at one point, which is crazy for the period. There's a hot sequence where Jannetty and Michaels are just in perfect tandem with everything they're doing. It's a hot match. It's a hot crowd.
Absolutely. It has been a while since I've seen this, I'll admit. But, this was a fantastic match. These were the Rockers were always delivering great stuff in this era. They worked so well together. And, the Orient Express, as we went over on our Express show, both phases of the Orient Express might be worth a revisit for people out there because they did have some really solid work. So,
yeah, there were a lot of good tag teams in the WWF at that time, and especially guys that could work with them, like the Rockers, the Killer Bees, etc.
Right. Well, my first match is from 1998, January 18th, 1998, at the San Jose Arena in San Jose, California, and it is Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker in a casket match. This era, the WWF was red hot. You had The Rock against Shamrock, LOD against the New Age Outlaws, Vader and the artist formerly known as Goldust. You had Austin winning the Rumble that year. So this, obviously, The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels had a lot of matches and matches that are more revered than this one. I simply think that this is one of their more underrated exchanges. But there is a lot going on in this match, a lot of shenanigans, if you will. But I actually think that in this case, it adds to the overall feud because this was the end of the Michaels-Undertaker feud. They had fought at Ground Zero and then at Bad Blood with the Hell in a Cell, which is a classic. And this was kind of wrapping up that first feud of theirs because it was transitioning into the Kane feud. And so you would have Kane turn on the Undertaker, and they put him in the casket and lit it on fire. And what a visual to go out. One of the main reasons that people remember this match, if they do at all, is because this is the match where Shawn Michaels, these two can't have a bad match, in my opinion. So I think that this one was really good, a really interesting way for them to end the feud, because like I said, it was simply a transition, but they had done pretty much everything, straight up matches, Hell in the Cell, and now a casket match. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I really enjoy these two working together.
I had seen the image of the casket on fire, but I don't think I've ever seen this match before in its entirety. So that was interesting for me to watch. As you mentioned, Undertaker and Michaels had great chemistry. Everyone thinks of the Hell in the Cell match. I like this one. I like the build. You mentioned there's a lot of shenanigans that comes towards the end. Like they do try to like a real match to start with. The casket comes into play, but it's not necessarily all about the casket or getting the guy in the casket until later. So there's a build there. Michaels does take a backdrop on the casket lid early on. I'm not sure if that's the spot that hurt him.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on there. Great power game by Undertaker, I think, throughout, which leads to great selling by Michaels, of course. I think the powder spot was cheesy. There's a part where he comes out of the casket with the powder. And JR does mention that last time Taker lost a casket match was against Yokozuna at Royal Rumble, and a bunch of people came out. So when all the people come out at the end, that's sort of a throwback. So it's a reference. The stuff with Kane, again, it's kind of cheesy today, but at the time it was just really cool, and it was just a fascinating thing to see. I do have one caveat with this match. One issue is that it ends with not Shawn Michaels closing the lid of the casket, but with Kane closing the lid of the casket. So Michaels wins via Kane.
Right.
And with that being the case, I have to ask, earlier in the match, they both go into the casket and the lid shuts. So wouldn't that be a draw?
I don't think anybody's ever addressed that on air.
Yes, that would be a question to send into Bruce Pritchard's podcast, probably.
I would love, you know what? I'm going to send that in, and I doubt they'll answer it, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I highly doubt it. But yeah, if they were both in the casket and the lid was completely shut, so wouldn't that technically be a draw?
Right. Well, Leonard, what do you have for us next?
All right, so next up so this is my second one of this list, and it is Triple H versus Cactus Jack for the WWF World Heavyweight title from 2000. And I know this kind of connects to a match that you're going to talk about in a little bit, so I won't go into that yet. But it's a great storyline. It's a great feud here, and I think this really made Triple H, who it is. It took him to that next level, and it was a great use of Foley as he was really broken down at this point, but he could still do the garbage kind of stuff. And him returning to his Cactus Jack persona was something that struck a chord with me at the time. I loved that. This has a nice build for a street fight. They go to the floor pretty early, but they don't stay there. They go into the crowd, but don't stay there. Such matches today usually, it picks a certain lane. We're all outside the ring. We're all in the crowd. This has layering, the way they move through the crowd, through the match, through the outside area, to that back to not the entrance stage area, I should say. Good use of weapons like the chair early and the wooden pallets and the trash can at the entrance. That's a fantastic way to introduce all these weapons without just pulling stuff out from underneath the ring. Foley does get the barbed wire 2x4, but that's one of his obviously planted and something that he was known for, especially when he was wrestling over in Japan. Great selling by Foley throughout. He went in here, I think, saying, I'm going to put Hunter over as hard as I can. And he did. And when we talk about the Steiner Triple H match, there's a big difference between how he and you look how he related to Steiner, how he worked with Steiner, what he put over, what he didn't put over, what he did, what he didn't do, as opposed to this match where you could tell he's working with Foley. He wants to work with Foley. He wants to do certain things to give him certain things in the match. And it makes both of them look really good. You know, Triple H bleeds. He bleeds buckets. He looks, I don't want to say he looks great, but the blood looks great. The announcer table spots were great, and how that was part of the overall story where they did the one table than the other. The handcuff spot, again, that was a callback to another match that we're going to talk about. But I think that works as a historical reference. My couple critiques might be that I think it went a little bit too long. It felt too long. And there's a random Rock cameo. Like, Rock just shows up. Like, I think it's a chair. He bashes Triple H with a chair and then leaves. So those would be two critiques I would have of this.
Yeah, you know, Leonard and I went over our lists before so that, you know, we knew what each other had. We sometimes don't.
Yes.
So I left this match off on purpose, but in reality, to me, this is like a clear number one. If we were ranking them, both of us, to me, this is the best example of a Royal Rumble title match that you can get. One of the best examples of a street fight. Both Triple H and Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, had something to prove here, and I think they definitely did that. They really showcased their skills. It was a vicious match. You know, famously, everybody talks about the spot where Triple H gets suplexed onto the pallet and has that piece of wood go right into his leg. It's not really something you notice on the first time you watch it, but like when you look at it afterwards, you can really see that his leg is bleeding very, very vigorously. But yeah, I love this match. I've watched it many, many times, and I would gladly watch it again because it's just that entertaining. I do not think there were a lot of people that had chemistry with Triple H. I don't think anybody had as good of chemistry with him that Mick Foley did, because I just think that their matches were tremendous. So yeah, this is a great pick. All right. So my next match, we are going a year earlier, 1999, January 24th at the Arrowhead Pond of Anaheim. No chance in hell was the tagline here. It's The Rock versus Mankind in an I Quit match. This era, you had HBK as the commissioner. Very weak Rumble card overall. You know, you had 4 different championships being defended. The European Championship was among them. You had the Sable Luna feud, which is one of Leonard's favorites, I'm sure.
Oh, it's up there, right with Don Marie and Torrie Wilson.
That's right. You had the Rumble was basically Austin and McMahon. Nobody really remembers much else.
Yeah.
But this was just a vicious match. It really, really was. Mick Foley's sacrifice, I guess you could say. I would love to say selling or work, but you know, like the sacrifice he makes here is just, you know, insane. It's one of the matches that I think adds to his legend. And obviously it was featured very prominently in the documentary Beyond the Mat, because Mick Foley's family was at ringside watching him get repeated chair shots to the head and the handcuffs, you know, very, like I said, very brutal. It's a very emotional scene when you watch the documentary. The fact that a family is watching that, I get it. To me, it doesn't take away from the fact that this match is a near classic. I loved The Rock and Mankind feud. I really, really did. Their halftime heat empty arena match, to me, is an unsung classic as well. They really just had great chemistry together. I mean, Mick Foley in these years was just doing awesome stuff. Even if it wasn't match-wise, the Rumble where, you know, I'm not sure what year it was. Maybe, you know, it wasn't this year, where he has all 3 characters.
Yeah, I don't remember, because I actually ran across that one from one of the shows I was looking at, but I didn't remember which one it was now.
But yeah, this is just a match that really will leave an impression if you haven't seen it. Leonard?
Yeah, you know, I think this is probably one of the most famous non-Rumble matches from a Rumble pay-per-view. And it's a good thing I rewatched it, because I remember having a big problem with the finish. which was Foley being passed out and The Rock putting the mic to him, and they play him saying "I quit" from an earlier promo.
Right.
Now, rewatching it, that plays a lot better than I remember because he is down. You can't see his face or his mouth. One question I had was, wouldn't the referee know Hebner is not in position to see?
Right.
It comes over the PA like it would. They do explain it the next night on Raw that it was Shane McMahon who took the edited clip and played it. So it all makes sense. Now, even saying that, it seemed to be kind of a cheap finish because you wanted Rock to win, but you didn't want Foley to say "I quit." You didn't want him to lose that mystique, that toughness. So it's an inventive finish, but it is one that I do think it feels a bit cheap. But overall, the match was fine with great intensity throughout. These two have great chemistry. We're talking a lot about chemistry, but chemistry is how you get good matches between people.
Sure.
They have to like to work with each other. I like the give and take they have throughout this. I like how they use the microphone to diss each other, not just to say, because usually when I quit matches, people say no or, never or whatever. And this is them talking crap on each other. And it's funny in that way. The collapsing table spot is a bit of a black eye here. If they get on it and it falls and you got like JR covering, like, oh, you had nearly 600 pounds on that table. I'm like, no, you didn't. He probably a little over 5, and then that turned into Jerry Lawler talking about how Cactus Jack got fat and all this, and it was terrible. The dive onto the circuit board is probably forgotten as one of Foley's greatest dives. That was crazy. I had forgot about it until I watched this again. The series of chair shots, as you mentioned, are absolutely brutal. Something very memorable, and you just have to give a tip of your top hat to Mick Foley. Because not only does he go out and he does this, but he does this with the express purpose in his mind, I've got to think, is I'm putting The Rock over. I am making a superstar out of this dude. And the same thing he did with Triple H when we talked about that match. So, Foley is one of those guys, and I think he's rare in the business, that he goes out of his way to make other people.
Absolutely. And the ending is an oddity. I remember at the time maybe not thinking too much of it, but in retrospect, it's creative, but it's also one you can't think too much about. So all right, Leonard, your final pick.
Last one I got here is the ladder match for the Intercontinental title from 2001, pitting Chris Jericho versus Chris Benoit. Now I know Chad doesn't really particularly like Benoit matches. I also considered Kurt Angle versus Benoit from 2003 for this list. And just about every list I said, I looked at some lists online to help jog my memory a bit. About every list I saw had this match on there. I like that they don't start with the ladder in the ring. They build to getting it and bringing it in. Even at this point, so much had been done with ladder matches. But I think they came up with a lot of great new inventive spots. I like the missile drop kick into the ladder by Jericho. I like the seesaw of the ladder into Benoit's jaw. There's the modified octopus stretch on top of the ladder, which is insane. There's a chair shot on a suicide dive of Benoit, which is sickening, and more so now in hindsight, considering everything that happened with him. The incorporation of the chair was solid throughout. It was a chair and a ladder. They didn't get too crazy with the weapons, but used those both well throughout. I like that they put together a match with a ladder in it, not just everything centered around the ladder. Like most ladder matches today are just doing crap at the ladder.
Right.
And here you have that, but there's still a story being told and a match being fought. And this was a good feud. It's a great win for Jericho. This is probably one of the best one-on-one ladder matches right after the one from WrestleMania 10 with Jericho and Ramon. I'm sorry, Michaels and Ramon. This is being Jericho and Benoit.
Yeah, what can I say? These guys had good chemistry, and I well said about the strategy with the ladder, because these days you do see kind of every spot having to involve the ladder in some way, whereas this one did have a story to tell, and there are quite a few Rumble matches with Benoit in them that are technically very high in terms of star ratings. I've gone over that in the past, but I certainly came across those in researching this topic. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? These guys had good chemistry with pretty much everyone they got in the ring with. So I like that pick. My last match is from 2015, and it might be a little bit of a surprise, but let's go over why. So it is from January 25th, 2015 at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins versus John Cena in a triple threat match. So as I've been doing, let's go over the era here. This is the forced Reigns push era. You would have Reigns winning the Rumble with The Rock coming in and celebrating with him at the end. Even though The Rock was there, the people were booing. They didn't want it. The Usos and the New Day were in matches here. You had the Bella Twins. The New Age Outlaws were returning to Job, to the Ascension. What a high mark on their career that was.
That could have made the worst list.
Yeah, you're probably right. So I put this match here because it was like I'm a big Brock Lesnar fan. I won't deny that, but I was surprised by how much I liked this match because this was in a period of the Rumble where there was a lot of disappointments, like Roman Reigns winning. I didn't want to see that. So I was looking forward to this match, but the fact that it was like three guys that will they have chemistry in a triple threat match? Leonard talked about earlier some of his misgivings with triple threat matches, and he's right. Sometimes they can be, very, either option A or option B. This one I thought was really fast paced and intense. I thought it worked to the strength of all three guys. I thought all three guys worked really hard to make this a excellent, really energetic match from start to finish. This was a different era of Lesnar. Obviously, this is the, former MMA monster, lumberjack Lesnar.
Lumberjack Leonard. That's our next one.
Yeah, that'll be Leonard's wrestling name. But no, I really like this match. I've never been a huge John Cena fan. Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar have done some stuff together over the years. They have fine chemistry. I just thought that this was a really well done version of a triple threat match during a Rumble that might not have had very many high spots otherwise. So,
this was the match that I had like zero memory of when you put it on the list. And I think I do remember seeing it on the one or two other lists that I was looking at. So, I had to go watch it. And you mentioned my comments on triple threat matches. And yeah, this defies that. I think this is very smooth throughout. I think there's a lot of three-person spots. I think it helps that it's very conceivable that Brock Lesnar can kick two guys' asses at the same time. And the fact that, again, the personalities of each. John Cena will just put his head down and keep going. Seth Rollins is sneaky and will pick his spots. And I think the characters all fit well here to give this a decent flow. There are some traditional triple threat tropes here, but there's a certain smoothness that just makes everything work. Lesnar is taken out for a prolonged period, but it works with the story and the action of the match. So when he does come back, it's a great surprise. There's a great pop from the crowd. Great spots here. I like Rollins jumping into the F5. I like Rollins putting Lesnar through the table. I was pleasantly surprised by this match. I don't know if I would call it one of the best, but I was pleasantly surprised. I did enjoy it, and I think you're right in the fact that these three guys surprisingly work well together. As far as triple threat matches go, which I said I don't like, this one works by and large.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. So, Leonard, I don't know if you listed, I made a short list and then kind of had to narrow it down. So,
yeah, I didn't write that down. I kind of had a few in my head and then kind of went, yeah, I think I'll go with that one. And I rewatched it and went, oh yeah, this works. I'll talk about this one. So no, I don't have anything else, but if you've got anything else you want to throw out there, feel free.
Yeah, just to kind of quick mentions on some of these that people might be wondering why we didn't go over. It's not a very good match, but it's very memorable to me, which was from '91, Slaughter versus Warrior. Uh,
Oh yeah.
just the fact that this is like, I don't think, at least as a kid, I did not expect the Warrior to lose the title here. And
No, this is a huge surprise.
yeah,
I don't think I watched it. I wasn't watching the pay-per-views live at the time, but I think I remember hearing about it and then just so much wanting to see it. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. I want to see what happened.
right, absolutely. And it was a really memorable storyline. And I don't know what Macho King, I should say, that scepter was made of, but that is one of the most vicious shots with a weapon that you will ever see. Like, save for the Jake Roberts guitar shot to the head by the Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I don't know what that scepter was made of, but he hits the Warrior square in the face with it. So it's nobody could argue like that he should have kicked out. But anyway, there was just so many matches that I forgot about here. Triple H and Shawn Michaels had a last man standing match that went to a draw.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes draws can work. These guys had a really long feud, obviously. Kurt Angle and Triple H were both heels in 2001 working against each other. So the crowd wasn't very into it, but they worked well together. Edge was in a few. Edge was against Shawn Michaels in 2005, against Rey Mysterio in 2008. Mm-hmm. You had AJ Styles in quite a few. He was against Cena in 2017. And then Daniel Bryan against AJ Styles in 2019, which is kind of like almost the end of that era in a way, because
yeah. And I saw Cena Styles on several lists that I was looking at.
Yeah, and Cena was against who was it? Umaga in a last man standing match in
that one, if I remember right, was surprisingly good.
Yeah. Although I that they had good matches together. That feud kind of has left a sour taste in my mouth simply because I think WWE falls into this trap of the way they book some of these monsters. They have them go undefeated and undefeated and undefeated to the point where then they lose to the big hero, and then that's it. Then those guys get shoved way down the card because nobody cares anymore.
Yeah.
The same thing happened with Rusev. So, but anyway, there's a lot of matches here. I could go on, and I'm sure Leonard could go on if he thought of more. So if you have any other comments for us, please let us know what your favorites are. If you disagree or agree with ours, we always welcome any feedback. We are going to try and bring you one final Rumble show next week by reviewing the new Royal Rumble. We'll see how that works. Leonard and I both have very busy lives, and you never know what will come up. So
yeah, I'm gonna do my best to watch it. If not on tape. If not, I say on tape. Yes, I have
tape.
a VCR. Wow. I have
That's
a VCR
right there, guys.
That is how old I am. I have actually. I have a laser disc recorder. I'm going to record it on laser disc and watch it that way. No, I'd be able to watch the replay via streaming on Peacock.
Right.
And let me once again say here, I went and I watched all these Rumble matches on Peacock, and it was just hell finding anything.
Yep. Yeah.
Finding the show and then finding the match on the show. Yeah. Because there's no bookmarks. If you go to Peacock and you go to the show and you go to fast forward, you'll see dots. And I go, oh well, those must be the matches, the chapters, as it would be. It wasn't. It was just the commercial breaks.
Right.
It was like, this is just your commercial. And when you go past the dot and you stop, you get a commercial.
Yep.
No matter where you stop at. Because there was a couple times where, okay, I think it should be next. And I wound up stopping it just a hair early, and I get like 2 commercials in a row.
Yeah. See, I paid $5 more a month to get rid of the ads. And that's the only reason you pay that $5 more a month is to get rid of the ads. You get literally nothing else. It's just ad free. Yeah, Peacock sucks. It does. It just sucks. There really is no reigning champ of wrestling streaming services right now. They all need work, in my opinion. But anyway, so hopefully this Rumble is good. Leonard, I know you don't watch current stuff. I got to say, I honestly don't know what they're going to do here. I really don't, because Lesnar.
I don't think they've got 30 people. They don't. I don't think they have 30 people. They don't have 30 guys and 30 gals. I don't know. I'm interested. We talked about Mickie James last time. I'm interested to see what she does. I know that Johnny Knoxville is supposed to be involved.
That is not a good omen, is it not? I mean, people.
Well, Drew Carey was in one.
That's what I was just gonna reference that, and that was funny. But it was funny because he was only in it for a hiccup.
Yeah, I think he got in, and two guys eliminated themselves, so he was alone, and he was like, "Oh, I'm winning," and then Kane comes out, and I think he bails. Yeah.
Anyway, so we will see what happens. For Leonard, my name is Chad. We will see you next week, and Alexa will see you out.